resume. I like to teach. I like to mentor. I basically, help many even incubation labs in India right now. I'm in Mumbai, so I'm helping quite a few engineering colleges for their incubation centers. There's an initiative from Indian government where we basically build entrepreneurs from engineering college, ME, MTech, BE sometimes. So I help them as an independent faculty. So mentoring is a part of it, but mostly it's trying to build the vision software, right? So that discipline, these new aspirants lack. So we normally guide them how to present, and we normally also let them meet, means a college arranges these guys meet financiers, and so that they can float their own business with the business idea and all. So I'm helping on even robotics and Internet of Things also on quite a few levels,
Yeah.
something like that sort. That's really enjoying, frankly speaking. Means trying to understand the idea from this really generation Y. The way they think, the way they explore things is much different from guys like me, I believe, because we grown with bookish and all. Are you joining? Are Bapre? He is in some.
Is he coming or no?
Wait a minute. Oh, come on. We are there. I think join some different link or something. I don't know. Let me post the link.
This
Just
was
give me a minute.
meant for Shubham, actually.
This is Shubham, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me post the link again. You join with the same link, right? I sent you near about how many 10 hours before or so. You might on the last link. The link changes sometimes. This Zoom, acts quite a few different sometimes.
No, I actually posted asking Shub if he's joining.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, sorry. I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, let it be. Let's get started. Sorry.
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess he's not going to join, looks like.
Yeah.
I
So,
don't
last time. Yeah, good, please.
You want me to call him to find out?
No, let it be, because he might be stuck up somewhere or something like. Minutes time. This thing do happens. Okay, because if he's not in, I believe he has certain personal priority or something like that sort. So we can. I'll share the even recording link so that you can have a look at it whenever you have a time. So I'll basically post in a group and you can have a look at it also.
Okay.
Okay. So last time we had a look at a good amount of agenda, which is still flexible. I'll say whatever I mentioned here. These are like kind of guiding points. Let's look at it from a guiding points angle, and we try to build our overall training material based on this, because the requirements are at a North American market might be a bit different than my thought processes. I'm in Asian market right now, so please guide me, keep on that, specifically on latest tools, and we'll get there, which are the latest tools, as I said, and we'll work on that. And then we have look at different type of the way different type of attacks, different type of things which normally hit to trying to damage the security overall. And as we see, there are various levels of security also. My laptop, my Android phone, my infrastructure, everything has a level by itself, and we try to basically make sure all these levels are secured. In a way, we have certain periodic audits we do, and we build these things personally also. If I want to secure my laptop, there are some ways where I can utilize, like we discussed about the password and the regular password and those things. So be applying better password makes it more secure. Yes, that's right. Applying various even hardware and software type of need. Again, this is also need basis rather than just applying security everywhere at a similar level, because otherwise it might pull down your flexibility, pull down your overall network efficiency in terms of applying too much security. So there should be a balance, I say. So in case of banking transaction, card transaction, we need to have utmost security, because those are the things where basically get targeted the most.
Right.
There are certain critical projects, critical juncture where we okay, Shubham is there. Great. So there are some critical processes, critical juncture which we had a look at yesterday, last session. to understand where the criticality and overall flexibility do clash with each other. And so we normally address those things at those levels independently rather than having application for all, right? And that's how we do it basically. Then we had look at we will look at basically the motives and history of cyber crimes, and why this security is important. What is the current industry thought process in terms of utilizing security workforce, right? Because we are going to get employed, we need to understand what are the tools are important as far as current market tracks, and then try to adapt those things. So and if any organization have a specific tool set, we might spend some time to learning it, we might spend some time understanding it. This is mostly one button in here, but button there. These tools specifically align to the have in mind, so they are targeted to a particular threat. So there are normally a multiple security threats which every organizations come across. Okay, no problem, Shubham. You don't have to apologize, I can understand that. Please, that's okay. So we normally target these security tools, or cyber security tools, for a particular vulnerability, particular threats, and so on and so forth. So this is not like even one tool fits all. We normally work with combinations of tools, if I can say around 6 to 7 on average. So if you work with a company, you normally work with a couple of monitors, with a couple of tools, and trying to understand or try to visualize where the threats are coming, and so on and so forth. So all these video you've seen in many movies, these they take to be copy the cyber security type of guys, because at secret level, the visualization, the understanding, the auditing is the most important factor. We'll have a look at it today, and we'll try to understand how industry is doing now. There's a specific department called we'll start with today's class, understanding security operations center. We'll take a step forward further, how we how these works, how to design a SOC. Design a SOC means it's like a bit of planning there, because structure depends on what type of tools you are using, and the tools basically depends on what type of threat you are trying to protect, right? So this is like what you can say, domino effect. One succeeds, supersedes another, and so on and so forth. So we try to understand how this SOC basically getting built up. It's very important, because wherever you go, be it a bank, be it a government organizations, be it military organizations, they have their own way of thinking in terms of how they want to target their security solutions too. Okay, so we will learn a bit of that, and then we'll try to find out certain way of designing a SOC also, because in normally the way I've seen the interview, they specifically ask, if this is the organizations, how do you go about building a SOC team? And this do happen because we are at a senior juncture, and we normally tend to get involved in such activities. So learning how we plan SOC is also very critical, very important. And many interviewers normally tend to ask, because they want to have that grassroots knowledge. Like if they give you a laptop, and they'll ask, please secure this company from such and such. This is the normal thing. Then you need to build a case study around it, and we'll have a workshop on that also. Like, this is the company, and let's try to plan an SOC. Okay, so let's get started as of today. Okay, so today we're going to understand SOC. This is how it's normally pronounced. So you need to really remember this thing. If you miss this thing, it can be a drastic damage to overall interview process. So Security Operations Center, and they call it SOC. So SOC team works around the clock, and anticipate and detect the threats going to be happen. So let's try to understand the background. How cybersecurity experts industry wants to be working is basically 24/7. That's the first thing. So we work in 3 shifts normally, 8, and there's a bit of overlap, 30 here, 30 minutes there, because you'll normally get handover from the previous team and then start working as of today. So let's say Bank of America, and he works at SOC center in, I think they have their SOC in St. Louis. It's a city near St. Louis, near about I think 120 miles above below. They have their data center as well as SOC main command center there. I was working with Procter and Gamble there, so I know these things. Let's say, so Bank of America SOC. If he's working with Bank of America SOC, and he has a shift of, let's say, evening 10 to how much, like these 2 and those 6. So evening 10 to 6. So he'll come at around 9:30, so that he can get an overlap or from 30 minutes. That's normal, but normally it takes an hour to understand what are the things system have informed us. We'll look at how system is inform us and all those things, and we'll basically understand the logs of it. We'll try to understand what type of threats, vulnerability we can we are going to audit, we are going to check today, and then how we build trying to build a solution. And there'll be a meet if you want to have a procuring new solution, want to build a solution by yourself, and so on and so forth. So there are bit of discussions, bit of even financial impacts is analyzed, and then we take a step and build this solution, and then integrate with whatever you have as in existing SOC infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So if this new tool is up too much of your network bandwidth, then we might think of scaling up our network bandwidth, and so on and so forth. So there are impact study, there's a gap study, and we'll have all those things categorically looked at in one by one point in planning or building SOC as well. Okay, so the SOC 24/7, that's the baseline. Normally, if it's a critical functionality like banking, credit card, or military for that matters, 24/7 is the ground rule. There are organizations who normally work in business hour, so they have two shifts, morning 6 to how much, like this 6 and 2, and then 2 to 8. These are the two shifts they work in. Overlap with the business hours, but they work in two shifts because they start early, they end late, because whoever is going to or if they plan, they have more vulnerable in the daytime, because everybody wake up and they try to sabotage IT and infrastructure of yours. So that's how it works. So we normally call it business business as SOC, and so on and so forth. There could be SOC, but this is far and few, like they just work on 9 to 6 or 9 to 5, those kind of shift as well. But normally SOC works 24/7, and these guys who works on 7s are much more work on very critical matter. The team are normally big, and normally, yes, there are quite a few critical junctures where you normally work in a pair. So and that's how we call agile pair, and you normally have work with one and others, because one set of eye can miss certain things, but two set of eyes normally was around 85 or 87% of whatever visualized threads you can understand, and so on and so forth. So that's why we normally work in pairs in most of the organizations, and this is how it works basically. 24/7 plus you work with the participant. So if you want to take a break for a natural break, or if you want to go for a what you can say eat something, snacks or something, a guy attending to the station. And the station is called SOC station, where you work. Normally have multiple monitors, and you work with a couple of keyboards, and so on and so forth. You might have seen these things. If not, there are quite a few movies where you can see SOC working. We'll have a look at the video also. Don't worry on that part. So SOC is Security Operations Center. It's a kind of command center, right? Or you can say an incident response team normally. And these are basically focused on cyber defense. So cyber defense is basically you're trying to defend the attack, the vulnerabilities, the threats coming from outside world. So you're trying to protect your network. That's the agenda. So you work in Ireland and you try to protect all the forces attacking you around the 360 degrees, and so on. So this is how we look at it in terms of cybersecurity security experts protecting the infrastructure, protecting the organizations, sitting on that island with multiple monitors and all those things. So you can imagine now how SOC works and the criticality behind it. Normally, for SOC, single person, if you look at from budgetary point or a project manager point, the SOC works at almost 4 to 5 times infrastructure cost than a normal typical IT resource. So SOC centers are created with lots of what I can say, a big revenue, and yeah, it's a critical. It's also as I told you, round the clock, and normally we work in pair most of the time. So could you understand the criticality, right? The work you're doing, it's quite critical for the organizations, and that's why they spend so much money on a typical SOC executive. And this is how happens. We'll try to understand the hierarchy also, how normal hierarchy works in the industry, and then we'll take it step further one by one, right? So we were yeah, so these are basically a kind of command center. So it's a kind of very secure room where you work with all those access card and extra limited access to these halls, rooms, or those what you can say cyber defense center, something like that. So the labeling can change depending upon the organizations, your region you are working, but normally it's called SOC command center, and that's how you normally work in. It's a kind of big room where there are quite a few number of guys working with a couple of monitors, and they normally work in a pair, right? So on and so forth. Let's take could you imagine how SOC works now? Just try to get your idea, or let's say Apeksha, could you please explain how SOC you could visualize now? Could you please put in your word?
Yeah, actually, I worked for a company. I worked for Bell Labs, and we had like an internal SOC department, and I worked closely with them. So I'm kind of familiar with the whole environment. Also, I have done multiple projects with the different clients. So I have visited multiple the departments where they the prevention and detection departments.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
That's great.
Yeah, and
So, good, please.
I as you said, explain it is so the way they have is like 24/7 rotating shifts. Staff is like always there. They have a big monitors, and it's like a happening place all the
Right.
time.
Happening places, right? What? Yeah, very
Right.
rightly said. Shubham, do you want to explain in your words what you visualize as an SOCs now? Shub- Shubham, could you hear me? Okay, let's go ahead. I think he might have stepped up from his center and all. Yeah, these things normally not allowed. That's why we normally work in pair most of the time. But yes, sometimes if the organization is not in that much, then you can have, as you said, single big monitor. Nowadays we have 4Ks by 4K monitor, and they use TVs instead of monitors, like 55-inch TV or something like that. So rather than having two separate monitors and all. I worked with NASCOM quite long, and we normally installed first, two to 23-inch monitors, and then Dell SoC. Then we moved to single TV. So we have I think 55-inch. Quite a few SoC centers have been migrated to 55-inch TV, and they have 4 or 6 monitor calibrated, with a piece of hardware. I forgot the name of that hardware, where you can have one TV worked as a 6 or 8 or 9. 9 will be the right number. 9 monitors within one 65-inch TV. LED TV and so on and so forth. Yes, so this is and we try to solve the threat as early as possible. So the priority is always there, the criticality is always there. Let's move further. So the SO staff typically comprise of employee highly trained in IT and cybersecurity skill. IT is basically monitoring, visualizing. Specifically, we are talking about the packet transfer, overall requests which are not coming from any particular software. So what we call normally anonymous request. Okay, as we seen yesterday, there are certain ports which are targeted. So we normally monitor those ports with more valor, and that's how we try to build security, because security is like we are trying to have a 360 view and try to understand who can basically take away my stuff. Like we said in a layman's term, I don't want anybody to steal my stuff. So I'll keep looking. I'll keep basically visualizing 24/7, which is normally not possible for a human. But as far as this machine goes, and we normally plan the shift on top of it. So this is how we address those, trying to protect my in the best possible scenario. Plus, we have certain accesses to the trusted users. So these trusted users and access to my infrastructure basically builds up the overall cybersecurity requirements. Okay, there are three main tenets of SOC: defense strategy, protection, detection, and prevention. This is normally asked in the interview. I took this from Cisco, one of the most prominent network service provider in North American market. So if you go to Cisco website, you can understand how they are trying to basically build this strategy, or they guide these SOCs to work with their tools, because I think Cisco have the most advanced and prominent tools which are sold across the North American market. So as provider for the cybersecurity infrastructure as well as software, we normally look at Cisco with the utmost universal scenario most of the time. So even interviewer thinks that way. So rather than all third-party softwares available in the market, we normally look at some serious players like Cisco, IBM. Then there's Sun, and so on and so forth. So there are a few prominent supplier which will basically try to understand their tool sets. And then plus additionally, if you want to target a particular region or a particular company, we can have skill set also. Okay, so there are three steps the way Cisco works. They normally plan protection, detection, and prevention. So you first protect your infrastructure. How do you protect? You close all the ports. So you close all the doors while sitting at home, so nobody can enter. Then you can take a nap, something like that sort. So we normally try to build a protection. Then we try to build a detection. If I'm at home, I normally put down some motion detectors, motion detector camera. I put down some wire trips, and there are means and ways of basically building detection. We'll have a look at it in depth, but right now let's try to understand the general requirement. General requirement of protection is just close all the doors and try to be secure. Some of the doors you need to open, some of the user you might need to give access to. If you're a bank, there are your customers, right? So on a given at a given point, we are looking at some how much I couldn't bring about I was looking for a kind of resource on a typical banking server, and it's bit differs because these even data center for, let's say, Bank of America, Bank of Commerce, it differs quite a lot. So I can't really pull out a number to give you example. Let me give you a throwaway example. Like let's take a Bank of America data center, and which is handling around, say, traffic of 10,000 users at a peak. Let's try to understand that. So what we see, we normally check out if there are peak is how peak means there are some too much transaction happening whenever there are let's say budgetary times, the funds allocation times, and so on and so forth. So like say New Year's business days were one of the most critical for even banking sector, because quite budgets are getting allocated, the revenue is getting distributed across departments and all those things. So these planning do happens on a bank server as well, because quite a few organizations, they normally just detach this money to this department or their departmental accounts, and so on and so forth. So like these type of examples where we need to understand if there are extra users load on my server, how do we protect it from something like denial of service? Because every pipe has a limit, right? Be it something like water pipe, be it like fuel pipe. So you need to understand in those days, you need to have some extra help in terms of having a bit of larger pipe, because there are so many requests. And rather than having denial service, what I'll say, I'll have an extra servers deployed. Nowadays it's possible because cloud. So deploying a logical server is very easy. You can do it in a minute, but then you want to apply all those cybersecurity product to that also, so that you can monitor it, you can inspect, you can protect, detect if any abnormality happened there, right? So for that you need a time. So what you do, we normally procure in advance and have a cybersecurity pile up their tools on those platforms. We can understand if there are any challenges in terms of extra users which are not authenticated, authorized, trying to access, and so on and so forth. And believe me, hacking normally get targeted to these peak hours, because they know the systems are most vulnerable. This is like you're opening a door for somebody to come in. You don't know whatnot, but there could be a couple of rats walking into a house. and they might damage your goods, something like that. So we try to basically build protection. Then we have a second step as in detection, and third step as in prevention. So if we normally learn from our experience as a human, we evolve, learn from our experiences. Animals don't evolve at that rate. They evolve, but they don't learn from their mistakes that effectively the way we learn. And this is the basically base of even the NLP, neuro linguistic programming. It's basically a branch of psychology, but we now adapted in robotics. So how NLP works? You learn from your experiences. You try to do error, rectify it, again, then try to not to make the same error again. As in machine, I can effectively do it. That's why as in cybersecurity cell SOC, I do it rather than a human. So I don't forget my mistakes. I build on those mistakes. I improve myself to basically go to that level. Try to build a scenario where if such threat comes again, I'm well prepared, I'm well prevented, well protected, something like that. So try to prevent all the errors. So if I see any rat coming with a guest, right? So what I'll do, I'll have some, that mesh and a water just before the door. So if the rat want to come, he'll fall down. It's a small scenario, right? Rat, human. So I'm, filtering these traffics with some gauge, with some, basic benchmark. Like the users should be trusted party. He should have used his phone or laptop before, so that phone or laptop is registered with me. There's something called MAC address, you might have heard of, right? MAC address is basically a 32-bit kit formed by many OS. Wherever you format a hard drive, wherever you have a certain set of system which is infinite, the OS generates a MAC address. Now this MAC address remains constant for a given time till you format it, till you don't change any major infrastructure component like processor, RAM, hard drive, or something like that sort. In that case, change, it's a kind of combination of software plus firmware. So it gives you a MAC address. Even each and every phone has a MAC address. MAC address is a unique key. And build keys on top of this MAC address, saying, okay, Ravindra Pandey, Apple pad is accessing Bank of America. MAC address. And these, I'm filtering the users step by step, saying, okay, he has logged in earlier, he has all the key, so it's a trusted party. So let him, use it. On top of that, I might send an OTP to his mobile so that he has to key it in to make sure he is the Ravindra Pandey who holds this phone with his fingerprint. If that's the kind of added security I've added to. So I can use fingerprint, I can use OTP. There are many number of ways, and we'll have a look at them also. So this is how normally I give after this protection, detection, and prevention. And that's how I give access to our trusted parties. Trusted party is the most important part here. Okay, so SOC has some list of trusted party. They will be allowed on priority, even depending on priority. If Ravindra Pandey moves to, let's say, India from North America, MAC address is same, but the gateway I'm accessing is a bit different because the international traffics come to a banking server through various other channels. I can easily detect because the header, the packet has those signatures, like from where these packets are coming. So I can have an extra security. I'm saying, okay, Ravindra, you can't transfer money right now because you are in India, and what we perceive like you were residing in St. Louis. So your packets coming on from some different network altogether. Have your things restricted as of today, but if you log in tomorrow, I'll have all those things verified and kept it ready for you for your next access. So today you can't really transfer huge amount. You can transfer amount up to $1,000, $2,000, depending on the bank security policy or bank business security limits. So I can increase and decrease limit in terms of where of request coming to me. Okay, and this is how we build. This is how we try to curb all the illegal activities, all the vulnerable activities at its face value. So whenever I see such thing, I block it. How can I do it? Because there are SOC guys who are working on these things. They can raise these red flags. But again, there are some things like let's say a senator traveling from St. Louis to France, and he tried to transfer some funds from his North America account to French account. So how do we do it? He might put a request in advance saying, "Ki boss, I'm so and so senator, and I have certain things to purchase for military, for what all reasons. So I might need a 1.5 million dollar to be transferred from my government account to this other party." And this thing do happen. So all such things are normally have a request approved prior to their executions. And that way I build a special pipe or special request, special exceptions to my all closed door, all my protected things, and then I'll allow that on top of that. Or what I can do, I can proactively move these things to a lower risk server and is saying, "Ki boss, this is what I'll need. Give me a time and I'll open those ports for you to transfer those things or execute those things for you. And specifically for you, I'm enacting this virtual server or something like that." So this also do happens, so that my main what you can say infrastructure is intact. I might open up another small port or pipe for him for a certain period of time, let's say a day or two, might be minutes, might be hours, might be seconds also. So this thing do happen, and this is how we learn from our experiences, because the more you open things, the more there are vulnerabilities, chances of threats coming on your way, and so on and so forth. So that's how we protect it in a step by step way. Then in SOC we have internet traffic's what you can say which observance or scrutinizing corporate area networks, scrutinizing. We have desktop servers, we talked about these MAC addresses, endpoint device like mobile tablets and all those things. Of course there are some database also. Banking scenario, you need to send your database in terms of accounts activity to various nodal agencies, various governmental agencies. So these things they normally will get executed at a database level. So Bank of America database talking to revenue department in North America. So how do I do it? They have some process called end of the day process, EOD. It's a generic universal term used in banking, used in financials, and in many other domains as well. So EOD, we need to understand end of the day process. Why are these services used? These services are normally used for all such governmental agency pulling the data from any banking server or any even NBFC, non banking financial institutions. NBFC are separate than banking. Banking is basically where you can, just to be in layman's terminology, banking is where you open your account. You normally go for your account service like card attached to account and so on and so forth. NBFC are specifically targeted to the loans or other financial services rather than account maintenance and all those things. These also transfer heavy funds from governmental to individual bodies, individual organizations, and these NBFCs are normally also handle a huge amount of financial transactions on a given day. So these are also generates lots of EODs to push this data to all these revenue departments, and the servers which are they are basically law or bind by the land of law, and so on. So these EODs are really crucial for each and every banking institutions. These normally runs at the end of the day of peak hours, what we call. So let's try to understand. We understood that peak hours, right? Peak hours are basically generally from 9 to 11 and evening 4 to 6. It differs region to region depending upon the number of users using such services. 9 to 11 is normally standard because even in North America, India, everywhere, these are the where people have planned their work, and they start doing their work, certain banking work critical for the day, and start executing those things early in the morning. So they hit the bank servers, like they access the bank servers in those times. So these are very peak timings for a banking. I'm trying to take an example of a banking as a standard because these are critical and they hold a financial informations with them, financial even revenue now analyzing the currency and all those things. So banking is the most crucial term in terms of cybersecurity operations, and many of the banking service providers puts of lots and lots of revenues in SOCs in building better secure networks for themselves. And this is how SOCs are normally employed at a much larger rate in the banking institutions. So that's why I normally banking examples, but the others are normally on a similar line. Means if you look at something like military for that matters, they might have some different PCAs. Yes, that's right. So for those PCAs, we normally do such things like EOD and on-off peak hours. So normally off peak hours for even bankings are in the night 12 to 2, because there are nobody doing any banking transaction at that time. So all these EODs, they normally run at those time, because the computers are at a quite what you can say, offload stage. So we can give such loads as transferring data, pulling up from what you can say database, reformatting as per required agencies, might be a CBS, file conversions and all those things, and then push this thing to the service provider, however they want, XML file, text split, tab separated, and so on and so forth. uh, and plus we compress them, we normally encrypt them. Depending upon the transaction, it can go to a triple disk key, it can go to a two level security, it can go to just a single zip file with a password, and so on and so forth. Depending on the transaction, depending on the scenario, we do these things. Now these are basically shipped or pushed to those servers, the governmental agency, the ministry, wherever, if even if the bank is replicating their data centers, they do it on these off peak hours. So normally Bank of America have around, I think, 6 to 7 data center across North American region. So what they do, they replicate these records. So whatever happened in, let's say, East Coast Bank of America data center is now getting replicated in the West Coast data replicating center. Now again, West Coast off peak and East Coast off peaks are different, right? So how do we manage? We manage off peak of this, and at the start of the off peak of this, we normally synchronize it. This is all planned, and these are all planned by SOCs. So here SOC is not just the security, they normally manage the infrastructure to such levels so that systems shouldn't be vulnerable. There are something like denial of service attack, there are something like disturbance in serving the users effective way. Well, SOC steps in, and we normally help them to build some efficient transfer mechanism, or transaction of PCAR transaction, and the numbers in between. This is how we plan it. So SOC is not just about security, it's security, but still there are a bit of what you can say environmental processes also we support for our parent organizations. This is how it happens. Am I am I detailed enough in explaining you this concept of why we need SOC? Means any questions on confusion on this? Do you want to ask anything?
No, we're quite. I'm clear. I don't know about Shubham, but I'm very clear. I have a idea how it works because I worked with security quite a few
Well,
years.
so this is a kind of preparation for you. Pardon me for that. Sure. Shubham, could you please speak up? Shubham is busy, I believe. Okay, no problem. Okay, so I believe Shubham also understand. Otherwise, we can pause the recording and he can have a look at that, and he can come up if he has any questions. No problem on that part. Let's move a step ahead. I know, Apeksha, it's kind of repetition for you, but plus bear with me. This is more for interview standpoint also. So these are some really these are some really critical wordings which we need to use whenever we discuss in an organizations or discuss during the interview. So
Sure.
it's a kind of revision for you at least. Chalo.
Yeah.
Most welcome. Let's see. So SOC business. Now let's try to go into more of SOC issues and trying to find out how we can build an SOC, how we can address such challenges, and which is the most effective, or what you can say best practices adopted by industry, right? So let's try to understand there. And of course, this is not universal. Means there are SOC which can be 10 years behind. Like if you go to GCC country, mostly they have the money, they are ready to spend, but the thing is that they don't get those consulting, they don't get the what I can say top technology tools available to them. Might be because of region, might be because of even they there are trust issues in terms of various governments in between, whereas various business owners. So even similar business, I across something called McDermott. McDermott is biggest shipping company which work with North American market as well as GCC, as in those countries like oh man, not South, the Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and all those countries, right? So and it has a big contract with navies also, even Indian Navy for that matters. So McDermott basically have a SOC, pretty different SOC in North American market, which is much secure. They have around, I think, 50 plus SOC executive working at a given instance. If you look at their Bahrain SOC centers, they have hardly 5 or 6 SOC centers, which has a larger has larger threats. Means even most of the Russian guys, Bahrain is near to them, and I don't know how this works, but mostly try to find out regions which are near to them, not required physically, because they normally transfer digital asset, right? But that's the normal scenario. Attack instance, the Russian guys don't try directly to the American market. Well, they try, of course, but they normally then land up with a nearer region market, right? GCC for that matters. So attacks on GC server of McDermott, it's quite higher rate than the North American market. But I don't know why they don't increase the strength in terms of or they don't use similar to the North American. It's the same company, but this is how things are different. So SOC business, we need to understand from a point of view where we can get the maximum salary, maximum pay rate. Plus, we need to learn new tool sets also. So North American markets keeps upgrading themselves. Japanese market, they keep upgrading themselves. Indian markets, they keep upgrading themselves. Korean market, or the nearest possible, like Thailand, Singapore, they are really up to the levels in terms of North American market for these SOC tools, and all the release new software. Canadian markets, it's really progressive. So these guys pay well. But if you go to somewhere like GCC, if you go to somewhere like China or Thailand or Australian market, I'm really surprised. Markets are not putting up so much revenue in SOC. I don't know why. They might have different thought process. That's how I like. That's how I think. There are some market who are really pay well. They really use the state-of-the-art technology, and that's where we want to be. Something like that. So whenever you're targeting job markets, have a look at for a good and better company, bigger company, so that they have good spending, so they can pay you better. They can pay tools, and they can keep upgrading themselves. So even as an SOC executive, you have work. You can start at a simple executive level. You can go to a team level, and so on. We'll have a look at the hierarchy also in a few minutes. So this is how the job market is also different from different region or different thought processes. Understand those overall business of SOC as well. So SOC most commonly found in the industries like healthcare. Yes, healthcare, they're quite in terms of user storages. So whenever I go to some and now healthcare have the largest spending in terms of IT migration, in terms of robotics, in terms of even IoT device also, right? I've seen quite a few old age home which are shifted to the smart switches. Smart switch, right? Means I can have an Android phone and operate those switch anywhere in the world typically. But normally whenever I'm in the old age home, I can use my cell phone to dim the light, to slow the fan, or to fold my what you can say, the bedstead, the cot, and all those things. So these are really good spending because they have the revenue. They can see the value for it. They can see the value on the returns from the customers and all those things. So healthcare is really growing by leaps and bounds nowadays. So even there are quite a few insertions of robots in various operations and those kind of procedures. Healthcare is coming really big. Education is always a good spender in terms of SOC business. Well, finance, of course, finance are the leaders. E-commerce business, these are also leader with NBFC, credit card industry, and all those things. Government is spending good in terms of SOC, military, and they use these latest tool, latest technology. So these are the domain we should concentrate to get a job, and that's how that's why I basically mentioned these things, right? And then business that are rely on large amount of highly sensitive data like military, and plenty of financial resources or plenty of financial transaction to be shipped through their offices. And these are the guys who really spend a great amount of revenue on building SOC and how having SOC up to date in terms of ready for the latest market trades, vulnerabilities, and all those things. Okay, so this is how the overall SOC business or SOC alignment should be. So as a resource, I'll normally try to hook up a job in these domains, whatever mentioned here, so that I can get paid well. I can get paid well for long because these guys have built the strategy in those respects. They align themselves to be the best, to be the most secure, to be the most ready for any need, threat, and vulnerabilities. In last sessions, we also had a look at something called virus, right? So virus also treated mostly as an domain of cyber security expert. I don't know why, but this is how it happened. Means the gradually industry have been maturing from an antivirus is a threat to a security, simple, and that's how they've connected the dots. So even virus or antivirus software is a part and parcel of SOC. This shouldn't be, because it's not a well, it's a periodic, it's a threat, and that's how they've linked it, but it's not a real what you can say, how do I say it, well, it's a part of hacking most of the time, but still it's a kind of passive attacking tool rather than an active attacking tool. So yes, it's a part of cybersecurity, and we should understand it that way rather than looking it the other way. So antivirus software update, distribution, and all those things isn't part and parcel of the SOC business. And we'll keep this thing learning step by step than once and for all. So pardon me for this, because as and when it comes to mind, as and when we talking about vulnerability and threats, we'll add it up to our list. If you have a pen and paper, you can build a list of it, or you can whenever you get a time, try to think it through. Well, we're going to plan an SOC, so you have to list of threats and vulnerability you think for a given organizations. So yes, there'll be a kind of hands-on workshop, and we'll discuss it step by step, how these vulnerability understanding or the threat assessment can be done as in person, as in you. It might be different, not totally, but at least 20-30% from me, or as well. So as in persons, I need to kick in those gray cells, start those thought processes of building newer threats, vulnerability, how I include in my list to check out. Because whenever I scrutinize these things, it gives me a good idea of what I should monitor and what I should, their priorities, their scenarios, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's take any question for me at this moment. Any confusing thing which you have found, might be more driving discussions or something like that?
No, so far so good.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's take a step and try to understand what is this SOC normally addressed to. Okay, because this is important from a point of view. You be a part of SOC, there are certain elements which are normally inclusion as an industry expert, or as an industry standard or industry best practices. Let's try to understand how do we what are these elements as. First, we'll start with something like reporting. Okay, now reporting is an integral part of an SOC. Why? Because wherever these threats comes, in terms of new threats, old threats, the audit performs, or what, whatever points we are addressing as of now. There are organizations where they normally measure it in number. So vulnerabilities were, let's say, 263, and as of this month, we are basically assessing the vulnerability at the rate of 303 points, and they normally keep pride in terms of depicting this evolution in a number to the business people. Business people don't care what are the 263 or 300 things, but they are also happy in terms of how you report to them, like how many vulnerabilities or how many threats you are targeting as an specific repeated process. Then there are certain threats which are assessed and reported. If you look at antivirus, right, whenever you run antivirus, it gives you a number of saying these many files have been scanned, these many have been exclusion, the virus last antivirus update was this day, and so we have in library so many virus signatures which we tally against. This number doesn't mean anything to some layman, right? But they still give it, because the larger the number, the more I feel secure. Out of that 303, there could be 6 and 7 repeating there are, and normally that's how industry works. They normally try to load these figures and numbers and all those things. It's in part and parcel of the overall, I'll say it's more to do with the culture of the given team, and then the reporting, which is basically accepted by the top management also. So it's between themselves. So wherever you go to work, there are certain things which you will learn on ground, like these, how the reporting works, to whom you normally send this. You need to go and present. Sometimes in normal scenario, like software industry like Microsoft, even I believe in IBM, you normally have a presentation once in a month kind of scenario, like how SOC is performing. Now there you normally share these numbers. Well, 2063 and 303 is really small number. They have a bigger numbers because they're working from so many years. So all these numbers, they get accumulated. And if anybody asks what type of periodic threats you assess on a given day, so you can give him that number, or pull out that current threat assessment list from a system and give it to them. And this is a normal practice also. Means if anything, anybody joins an SOC team, they normally get this list of big threats which are already included in by the periodic audit done by the system, not by a person but done by a system. The reporting, the system, whatever it reports in terms of green, yellow, red, those kind of scenario are normally analyzed by us, analyzed by associate executive, and then they report like these many threats have been cancelled, these many threats have been addressed, these many threats was realistic, but yeah, we stop it this way, and those kind of scenario. So reporting, yes, is an integral part of associate team. We normally get our remuneration salary based on those reporting also most of the time. So there are KRAs based on the reporting. Okay. Research and development, you keep researching for new vulnerabilities, new threats, you learn from others as well. So if Microsoft, or if let's say any smaller bank reports a threat of hacking data center server, so you tend to understand what type of server were it hacked by, was it a router, was it actual database server, was it an actual business server. Okay. I believe you understand the difference between database server, business server, router, right? Am I means you can understand the difference? That's my question. Router, web server, business server, database server. You can differentiate this, right?
Yes, I can. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. No, you understood the database center setup also.
Yep.
Okay, so that's it. So these different servers have different vulnerabilities, different level of criticality, and that's how we address it. So for these different servers, we normally build these learnings. If let's say Bank of America got hit by some attack, we'll try to get the details, and these banks are really forthcoming in sharing those things, because then they'll come to know the better tools also available for certain areas. This is how we keep building. That's why I'll say open system have a larger part to play in cybersecurity, because these discussions, they happen in an open system area. We don't share information like port, server name, and all those things. We normally say database servers of Oracle Financials, or database servers of DB2 and all those things. So what type of database server were there, so that the overall understanding is like the database provider had certain things which has to be updated to. So even that report will go to the DB2 by IBM, or Oracle by itself. Now Oracle is right. It's not purchased by anybody else yet. I don't know. So if it's purchased by anybody else, then you send the report to the corresponding company or the corresponding database service provider, and they'll some extra special care for such attacks, such vulnerabilities, such threats. And this is how it happens. And this happens in open system, because I'm not expecting any money from Oracle but for presenting this threat which came to me. But what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to request them to give me a solution if such thing hits again next time. About financial, yes, there could be some financial in the past, but as we go on, these are reducing. So cybersecurity or SOCs, they are performing at their efficiency peak, and that's what is expected. And we normally learn from industry on day-on-day basis. so that all such threats, such vulnerabilities are basically captured and corrupt. And that's how we improve. That's how we develop even new tools also. So if these vulnerability happening, let's say once a week or once a month, repetitive for 3-4 months, then I have to be really active and build a software to visualize this thing whenever it happens, and alert all the SOCs around which are responsible for managing those gates. Yeah, we call it managing those gates. Gates are basically a combination of a particular infrastructure and a particular pipe. Now let me go into depth. This is a bit of confusing idea whenever you talk like this, a server and a pipe. Server is basically the destination, pipe is basically the route which the attack came from. So there could be a GC server sitting in Manama, Bahrain, and the pipe could be something like coming from you. Pipe in the sense wherever the regional which we thinks the data packets were hitting the server were. And that's how we keep studying these things. Now these destinations and the pipe, or the server and the pipes, are the most important factor, and that's how we build this vulnerability. So if these hitting us quite a lot, I'll block them remotely, and I can block them. As we see, there are some ports opening, so we can block them, and we build software to block them. If such request comes, it'll get alarmed in the my SOC, and the SOC will basically check out or retrace those packets. That's how it happens. These have been depicted in quite a few movies also. It normally don't happen in that what I can say alert stage, but yes, we do try to basically retrace those packets to down to a end user who have generated or created those packets, normally through IP networks or IP addresses. And that's how we do it. Well, normally you can mask IP addresses through VPN also, but there are some tools, or there are some VPNs also. They have built to share certain shady information in case if there's a need to by any governmental agency. And there are such agencies which are basically licensed by VPN itself to gauge the end user's IP also. And that's how all these even cryptography and all those things, these transactions, they say can't be traceable, but the way I believe they are traceable up to a great level. And yes, could this agency go bad, corrupt? Yes, it happens. And that's how we're trying to make a balance between secure and those unsecured things. And that's how we do it. We keep learning, we keep building better security tools day by day. VPNs are basically to mask VPN, so I don't have to explain VPN, right? VPN, right? You worked on VPN, virtual private network.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay, great. Okay, perfect. Otherwise, do let me know if you find any words or any terms which are really couldn't be understood, because these plots where SOC works are really crucial for our interviewing process, crucial for our understanding. So for that you should understand these terminology, and we might need to explain it in our interview, like how these things do work. So research and development basically targets such trace these resources. They normally target to find such repetitive vulnerabilities and try to build some tools. If available in the market, we can just procure them. If it's available in an open system place, we might request them a copy or something like that sort, and so on and so forth. In SOC, in open space, we normally request a copy, because whatever copy is installed on a server has a specific ID, and all those vulnerabilities are traced via those IDs, so that these vulnerabilities are traced even for general team or for me as well. So that's why we have a typical unique IDs given to all these web server instance wherever those are created. Can be in a Google cloud, Amazon cloud, or whatever clouds your organization is using. But we try to basically label that pipe, as we say, as a cybersecurity expert. So whatever pipe you created, you label it with a unique ID. In case if you want, you can name it also, but that's different from your organizations and different from others as well. So normally it's a unique hex key which we normally refer to, and that's the name used overall for communication purpose also. Okay, then threat intelligence. Now intelligence all about, means let's discuss on that. What do you think, Shubham, what is intelligence? I know it's
any information that provides an insight on what is the origin of the attack, how it was carried on, what was the purpose, etc. I mean, anything related to that particular event which one can collect.
Sure. You were talking from typical cybersecurity expert, but that's okay. No problem. I will generic answer because there are a bit of environment to it, a background to it also. Ma'am, could you please explain in your word what do you believe intelligence is? Apeksha, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, pardon me. Yeah, please go ahead.
So yeah, I echoes the same what Shubham said. It's like detecting threats and use your infrastructure to prevent that.
That's right. Okay, no problem. I was looking for more of a AI type of definition where intelligence is being adapted to the environment. That's what the intelligence as of artificial intelligence talk about. And there are a great number of theses available on the net.
Oh, so
Whenever you have,
the intelligence here. So the intelligence here, you were asking that in context to the artificial intelligence.
no, same thing. Only it's a more of generic sense because it covers all those environmental variables also. Let me try to explain.
Okay.
So intelligence is basically trying to get adapted to a given scenario. Now, in case of cybersecurity, what we are trying to adapt to, we are trying to curb the threats. We are trying to curb the illegal requests to your system, to your network, and so on and so forth. So those things. So whoever which is not trusted party, which is not accessed before, is normally untrusted by default, but still trusted party which are not visited to me. So these are like banking users who don't use bank via internet too often. Trusted, yes, they are trusted. The trust has been created. There has been a pipe renamed after them, or there has been deactive party. Let's call it deactive party. So these things also included, must be included, should be included in the overall what I can. Giving access to a given system, right? So these type of things, because if the user is not active, get active one day and is try to request for, let's say, number of transactions happened in the last month. I want to get a printout, so I logged in my Bank of Commerce credentials they've given me, so I have typed in and blah blah blah, get registered and all, and trying to access my number of transactions in the last month because I need to submit it to some loan nodal agency or something like that sort. So what happens normally, if you close all the doors like we discussed, like that protection thing, so when you close all the doors, such users might left out. So you need to understand the trust has been created, might be recently, but you need to create those trusting parties and which are inclusion, right? Excluded from normal reporting and all these research and development. You need to include those things in terms of threat intelligence. So that's how we have something called threat intelligence, so that all such parties which are normally left out by normal operations can be intelligently included. But yes, there is also catch. Why there is a catch? Because there can be certain individuals, or let's say hacker, white hat, blue hat, black hat, whatnot. He tried to gain such data and try to access your banking information. Now what we do, so our system is intelligent enough to tackle such scenario. Now how do we do it? Let's take a sample. Let's say my uncle and auntie, they have user credential with Bank of Commerce. Now what I have been visiting their house for Thanksgiving and whatnot, and I found that key card or that bank sent to them, they never used it, never opened it. So I opened it and tried to access it. I got registered. They got their phone SMS and all those things. So I had an entry to the bank account. Now how the bank find if I'm a trusted party, which is which bank sent to them, or I'm a different person, because we don't normally check out on a facial recognition and all those things, right? So what we do, have another level of checks for such parties. Might be an OTP sent at that instance, or might be a fingerprint if it's possible, because don't have the fingerprint is not that clear, or sometimes it not get read that clear. So we might have a camera kind of or we can have an executive call the person saying, hey, Uncle Sam, somebody is trying to access your account. Are you the same person? Then you say, no. I couldn't find that leaflet you sent me for that username credentials, but yes, I believe, there's a leak. So, then we'll shut down that door. Something like that. So there should be, we build some additional checks and balances for such thing. Well, you have to trust because it's a customer. You don't have to give complete full-fledged access on a day one. So we do it step by step. So you have some extra mechanism, and that's how you curb such threat. Build this intelligence within our system depending on your scenario, your current scenario where you're working. So these things do change up to a great level. When, let's say, if you're with military, the threats are at quite critical level, and the attacker is not lenient as in, a relative of a person stealing the credentials. He can be directly accessing the, or directly start transferring the money. This do happen. So in such scenario, how to tackle those things, and this will learn, because as the thieves learns, the police have. So as the threat increases, the overall protection also needs to be increases, and so on. And these are very closely related. One if one keeps actively working and the other stops, well, there's a too much danger. If these guys work and this guy is not there, well, the efficiency gets collapsed, because we try to build more productive services, more services, the efficiency get dropped, and so on and so forth. So SOC is a balancing act. Always remember, SOC is not policing body. Are different. SOC, we are basically a kind of research scientist who build our system to protect our threats vulnerability. Right? And how do we build it? Well, we improve a software solution, we monitor our incoming traffic, incoming requests, and we them, try to even go to an nth level to understand if there's a vulnerability or threat in that request. Like you can have an executive do a phone call or something like this. These are also part and parcel of SOC. Even nowadays, SOC have a voice supports for such requests. So in case if somebody logging it up for the first time, you might have an SOC executive. Hey, Ravinder, is that you which are trying to log into your account for the first time? They'll say, yes, I've tried, and then they'll ask a couple of questions, days and the address, and all those, depending upon the criticality, depending upon the process created by the businesses, right? And that's how we work it out. Then again, knowledge base. For all such activity, we have to have knowledge base. We have learned it the hard way, not the SOC, but the overall management by itself. So every management now have a knowledge base. What is knowledge base? We archive all the knowledge we gather from such instances. Have anybody worked on the knowledge base by any chance? Shubham?
I have done it. I have created knowledge base.
Okay, great. Could you please, tell us, share those?
So, pretty much knowledge base is like you go through your day-to-day activities, day-to-day issues, keep a log of those, and then find a solution and create a area where there are questions and answer to those questions.
Perfect, perfectly said. And sometimes, we use a use case diagram, like, complete workflow of how that problem or the threat was sorted out, and how we could do it effectively the next time it comes. And, those kind of. Right. I believe IBM uses, Rational Rows. UML, Rational Rows is a software where we create a UML drive.
Yeah.
Use workflow diagrams or activity diagrams efficiently to have these knowledge base depicted in those many sense. So because as IBM, they work globally, so for all those linguistics, different languages to be converted, you have those kind of software already built to have these knowledge base created in so many languages at the same instance. But there's a challenge in North America, and so on and so forth. So it's really
now
great.
It's all migrated to Watson. Everything.
Yeah, that's right. Because even linguistic have their own challenges, like you can't use this word, that word. So there is a basically kind of intelligence built into that system. Yes. Very rightly depicted. That's why Watson experience is going to help us, believe me, throughout our all the sessions. You'll be kind of guiding point for us, and we'll learn from that, right? Shubham, could you understand the importance?
Yeah, a little.
Okay, great. Have you worked on a knowledge base anytime during your career?
No, I mean my career itself is only 4 months old.
Okay, okay, no problem on that part. Okay, so knowledge base nowadays is really crucial, and you could get an NC as an personal NC, process NC. NC is non-conformance. So if Shubham is working with IBM and he forgot to add his instance to knowledge base, there could be whenever your appraisal come, that manager can depict out like Shubham, you forgot to add this to knowledge base, so you're not helping organize to go to that level also most of the time. I know this looks really absurd, but it's really happening, believe me. Means I was with enterprise undercar as a team lead, and that time we basically told to have these things included in our appraisals. And appraisal is where normally get a good raise, bad raise, and those kind of scenarios, so which is really crucial for us. So understanding knowledge base is an important part. Keeping updated ourselves is also an important part nowadays, because we work in a modern times and there's plethora of information available, and we'll learn basically how we can keep updated. So if you're a medical practitioner, there are a number of sites which you should subscribe to and get those details, like updated things. As in cyber, I would like you to have a couple of 6 to 7. I'll give you the links, don't worry on that part, to subscribe to, so that you can get at least a week. You can just review, script it through basically, rather than reviewing. And if you find anything interesting, go through it in depth. There are some blogs, there are some good amount of articles coming, let's say cio.com, which is a really great information site, because normally if any very high impact thing happens in terms of security area, normally it's reported by CIA, CNN, CIO, CNN, and all these guys. And these are mostly kind of media reports. They're not very clear in terms of how and what happened, but still they give you an idea, like how what was the impact, how damaging it was in terms of revenue, in terms of the brand value and all those things. So it's important to understand it's are being recorded, phrased, worded, or even included in the knowledge base of a non-technical guys as well. Well, as in technical, we'll have a look at how these threat incident are reported and how they are basically included in the knowledge base also. Okay, as we discussed, normally it's in a diagram, but yeah, sometimes it can be a simple Excel sheet with step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and remedies we have addressed to. The next level remedies, if you can make it more efficient, the suggestions from the author, and so on and so forth. And believe me, there are quite a few awards each and every organization started distributing in terms of adding value to the knowledge base also. So knowledge base is really critical for each and every employee wherever you're going to work for. It might seems trivial at the time, but whenever you start working, you'll understand the girth of it. It's really important nowadays. Okay, now ticketing is an important part, because all these SLAs, service level agreement, your efficiency depends on the turnaround time, the way we reacted to the situations, and the way we have curbed the threat. So all these what you can say, traceability is important in terms of each and every cybersecurity expert. So ticketing is like the incident report generation. So they've created an incident, so it given a number. Normally it's there are software like Remedy and so on and so forth. These are ticketing software, and these are, of course, they are third-party software, not in purview of cybersecurity expert as such, but still you get a ticket, you get an email, SMS, and what type of alerts that organizations have been policy or procedures of reporting to. So you'll get a ticketing number, and you'll try to understand ticketing, the necessary SLA attached to that tickets. What do you mean by turnaround? How can you reply to that? How much? How do you estimate how going to report or how going to address that issue? How are going to what are the response you are trying to build, and so on and so forth. So there'll be plan, the final reporting as well. So all this ticketing traceability is important. And basically this is how we get awarded also most of the time. Like, how do you tackle a typical instance? How crucial were your thought process in terms of finding a response and a remedy? So this really makes overall whole scenario really important. Okay, SIEM, I forgot the long form. Let me go to a long form. SIEM can Oh, man.
It's a
Okay, security information event. Okay,
event management.
okay. This so security management information. Okay, now SIEM are basically used by quite a few bigger IT giant nowadays, and they have a typical part of a software, a group of softwares which normally address to these security information management system. And what they do, all such instances are basically getting and labeled in terms of this is the instance related to an unauthorized entry requested by so and so person, and so on and so forth. So these are basically utilized. So whenever there's an instance, wherever there's a new ticket generated, we normally check it with the ACIM, because ACIM has a knowledge base, or they have a part of knowledge base rather than a complete knowledge base. Knowledge base is almost shared on an organizational level. So if there's an organization like IBM, the knowledge management base is a huge scenario. Even to fire a search, it might take few seconds or so. But if you go to ACIM, it's a particularly what I can say, a small part of knowledge base, which is normally referred for a particular security based instances. So rather than SOC executive going to a knowledge base, it goes to the ACIM database and try to find out if similar instances have been reported in the past. So all such reported instances are normally get calibrated or marked higher threat level at ACIM. Yes, about a threat level. Let's try to understand this terminology, which is very important in terms of cybersecurity expert. Threat levels are basically the levels at which we address these threats. We address all such instance happens to a given company, given organizations, or given network, or a given target, right? So these threat levels are get buffed up whenever there are repetitive threats. And by this, it means that these are a crucial points. So whenever I go to reporting, I try to find out what was the prominent threat. So priority number one threat, what was it? It's coming, a request from Russian, regions. Oh man, then I need to really, understand how. I need to really trace it out. Who is doing it? It's a particular party or it's a particular organization. This also happens. Means I've seen there are a couple of even associate experts reporting some HR related information request from quite a good number of competitive company, because they try to find out if the resources with the similar skill can be picked up from this company for themselves, and so on and so forth. So these type of threats also can be found out by cybersecurity expert. These are important in terms of business business what you can say activities, and try to prevent some bad thing happening to the organizations also. So these threats or these management systems help us out as an SOC executive to a great level, and these are related to the security and those type of threats and vulnerabilities. So these are the most crucial systems which you utilize on a day by day. So these and supports or tools and all those infrastructure which have been procured by the organizations for a given associate team. So ACM is what we work in or work with basically on day-to-day basis. And aggregation and correlation, these are basically kind of extension to ACM, I'll say, where we try to generate all those seniority and priority threats based on the aggregation and correlation with a given threat, with a given region, with a given pipe, with a given target, and so on and so forth. So this way we build these relations, a report which basically try to make us more enable in terms of the forthcoming scenario. So this is like kind of building the trends, how we are increasing our networks security prevention type of stuffs. So those kind of scenario. And then of course log collection is the topmost asked, because as a cybersecurity expert, I normally most of my time goes in log review, log analysis. So what's the other name of cybersecurity expert is basically analyzing security logs. As simple as that. That's the second name of this job. So you normally keep analyzing these logs for any discrepancy, any abnormality, and so on and so forth. Now there are softwares also. So if there are any red flags generated by the software, then only logs are text logs. There could be binary logs also, but most of the time these are text logs, and we try to understand, or we try to run it through a security system so that it can point out abnormality for us. And believe me, these logs are huge, because a typical server log for a request can go up to 1,000,000 lines just by request coming from kind of scenario. And these are depends on how the SOC wants the logs to be. So these logs also basically getting programmed on a OS level. So we have certain programmers which will help us basically working at an operating system level or a low level programming or a system level programming, the way you want to call it. Why? Because we have to get the intelligent log from the system itself, then build a tool, give us all the red flags, yellow flags, and so on and so forth as per the organizational policies and procedures, so that we can act effectively. And normally, believe me, if you go to SOC centers, you can find there are beeps, there are different type of noises coming from various machines. These are basically the anomaly popped up by the system with the intelligence and all those things. The executive should look into it and so on and so forth. So there are certain areas which are segregated for an SOC. So you might be in networking in incoming network type of security expert. You can be what I can say, remedy suggestive type of resource. You can be something like effective response resource, and so on and so forth. So there are in SOC how the cybersecurity expert normally works too. We'll have a look at it in a step-by-step way. Any confusion at this moment you would like to discuss in a depth?
No, I just want to add one more thing. When you discuss about the same, one of my product IBM Curator was the one of the tool they used to collect the logs and threat prevention logs.
Right,
it was one of the biggest tool available in the market right now.
That's true. That's true. And there are quite a few good number of tools available in terms of just reading the text file. It's normally at the end of the day you're reading the text file and building a rule of anomaly, right? How anomaly, because it's abnormal, so it's not happened before. So how do you catch it? So there are some pattern matching. There are some and lots of intelligence things going on nowadays. And we have really great intelligence have been built by, of course, Watson, one of the most prominent intelligent machines we have helping us on these things. So yeah, of course, IBM's tools are the most matured and most, I think, used good throughout the industries. So that's really great to know about such tools. Yes. So I believe, Shubham, do you have any anything to add to it, or anything which you need more details in understanding or something like that? Shubham, I believe he stepped out or something. No problem. So this is how we keep building our knowledge base. Okay, let's go ahead. No, it's almost 8 minutes. Okay, it's almost 1.5 hours, and if you got certain another engagements or prior engagement, we can stop now also, or I can continue for another half an hour or so. What do you think, Apeksha? I think the communicating parties right now. What do you feel? Shubham is kind of, I think. Go ahead, please.
Up to you. I am okay if you want to
Continue.
Actually, let's stop, because I know
that's what I feel.
Shubham
because
is quite pre-engaged, and but
go ahead,
I
please.
have one question, and probably I'll take a few minutes of your time.
No problem, please.
So there are so many companies use a Splunk nowadays, and can you talk about it, like just briefly on that? I don't know anything about Splunk.
You want to understand, there are companies which are providing solutions in the right. I would not talk right now because we were still learning in terms of what is needed. Let's complete that thing. Let's try to complete this SOC. There are, I think, 2 or 3 more slides in terms of half an hour or so. So we might describe on the solutions provided by a company on a larger level, right? So those kind of scenarios. So rather than confuse taking matters ahead, I'll step back and let's learn it in a way where we can in depth, because then you'll have really good questions. I can start right away.
I can understand. Yeah, definitely.
No problem. Chalo, so let's stop here. And I think Shubhami also busy. So I'll have these recordings share with you, the first one and the second one, so that you can have a look at it. Even if you have any questions or any point you want to discuss in depth, we can discuss on that thing. And the tools which you have suggested for IBM, I would really love to have presented, let's say next to next session with, let's say, 10 minutes of your understanding of the tool. So what it really means to us or means to our learning is basically have one tool and the targeted area of the out of the 6 or 7 areas, and how it's effectively helping, right? Because because this is the most mature tool, and I'm really proud to have you as a participant here. So let's try to understand one tool and its targeted area, and then we'll have another tools also, of course. Okay.
All
So
right.
if you can spend just 5-10 minutes, whatever you feel comfortable in. I don't want any commercial or those information, just to understand how that tool have been, let's say, matured enough, and how that tool is targeting to which all area in the whole ACIM product.
Yeah,
Okay.
I might have some slides. Definitely, I can share.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot for that.
All right.
Let's stop.
I'll see you on Tuesday.
Yeah, next session will have on Tuesday. That's right. Tuesday or Thursday, depending on I want to complete this SOC thing and individual tools, and then we'll start understanding those tools also as and when we do. Okay.
So
Sure.
wait,
Thanks, sir.
Tuesday or Thursday? Are we having the class on Tuesday or not?
We'll need it Thursday most probably. I feel it.
Okay.
Okay.
I have one more thing. In the first August, I am away for 2 weeks, and I'm pretty much just in a hotel. So I will try to join, or I will probably try to listen in. But it is very well possible that I might be in an area where I'm not able to participate or anything. So I will let you know where I am, but
Sure.
from August 4th to August 15th. So I'm kind of in a pocket where there is some issues.
Okay, no problem. Let's find it out. Don't or what we means if it's just only Shubham, then let's if you can take 2 weeks gaps, that's also I'm fine with that also. Let's discuss when Shubham is around, and then we'll address that situation also.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. You have a good night. Bye. Take care. Thank you.